Hello, family. Welcome to another awesome episode of Epic Understanding. I have someone very special for you with us tonight. I have Chief William Blair Anderson. I'm excited because it is not often that I get to talk with such a nice guy from Minnesota, St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Well, thank you for having me, Coach Love. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and all of your followers. So thank you is not enough. I appreciate the chance to visit.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into it because you're chief of police in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And, how tall are you?
6'3" on a good day. I used to be taller, but I'm getting older. So
Okay, you're a 6'3" guy from Detroit, right?
right.
But you're a chief of police in St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Right. And forgive me for going casual, but I am flying my amazing blue, right? Go blue from Michigan. Hail to the victors. Even though
There we go.
St. Mary's, but I'm amazing blue all the way through. So yes, I'm from the D. I'm from the hood, born and bred.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your background because Detroit is a whole lot different than Minnesota. A
Uh,
whole lot different.
yeah, that's an understatement. I grew up in one of the most violent precincts and the most violent city in America at the time. But the ironic part, Coach Love, is that I never felt unsafe. I mean, there was random gunfire and there was violence and all kinds of craziness around us. But I was more afraid of my mother and father and my sisters than I was those fools in the street. And because of that, and because of everybody having a hand on me, whether it was coaches, whether it was teachers, whether it was counselors, parents, I grew up in an era where the neighbors would get your butt if you did something wrong and send you home and call your parents and let them know what you had done. And so double jeopardy didn't exist at our house. And so I'm so grateful for that kind of upbringing because it made me the person that I am. And I have to tell you, it's what drives me. I owe all those people who invested in me. And I know you and all of your followers have heard the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I'm one of those kids. I'm that kid that the village raised.
Okay, so I'm curious. You are from Detroit, and now all of a sudden you're in Minnesota. How did that happen?
Well, I was chasing dreams. I played sports that kept me out of trouble. It kept the street guys and the gangsters off of us. When you wore your Letterman jacket through the city of Detroit, you kind of got a pass, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
Some of the gangsters out there in the street were folks that lived next door to me. I grew up with them, and they would tell us, "You don't want this. Stay away from this," and they would keep harm from coming to you. And so I was chasing my hoop dreams. I thought I was going to the NBA. I played with 3 guys on my team who went to the NBA, and I played against a lot more. And so the older I get, the better I was. But I thought I was going to the league, and I'm so glad I went to class instead, Coach Love, because I got as close to the NBA as my couch. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. Well, you said you went to school with some folks that actually went to the NBA.
Absolutely. Nigel Knight, he played 10 or 12 years. Willie Burton was a lottery pick and played about 14 years. I went to high school with those guys, and I was the captain of that team. And so it's cool to name drop a little bit, but those guys are friends of mine. I've known them, since we were teenagers. We don't keep up as much, but when you play with that kind of talent, you why wouldn't you think that you're going to? And I was the captain of the team. But again, I'm glad I went to class instead because my education served me way better than my athletic ability.
Well, it's not either or, it's definitely both. You've got to do both if you're really going to be successful.
Agreed. And here's the best part about that. Real talk. It kept me out of trouble. It kept me out of mischief. I literally
Hmm.
went from one sport to another to another. I played football, baseball, basketball, and track uh,
Hmm.
all the way through high school. When I got to high school, baseball was done. I got hit in the face, and that was all I needed for baseball. But football and basketball and track. I mean, that's all we did back then.
Hmm.
We got done, and we lived to find a gym or a park where we could play. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that really kept us out of the mischief that was going on around us. Because back then, your parent, you had to go outside. I mean, we did. If we didn't go outside, mom would find chores for us in the house.
Oh,
You'd be polishing silver, or mopping floors on your hands and knees. And so we figured out we probably should go outside and figure out something else to do. And so we played ball. That's what we did.
okay. So you got to Minnesota via playing ball. How did you get involved in law enforcement?
Great question. I originally went to college to be a news reporter, to be a journalist.
Ah,
Yep, I wanted to be, I wanted to be, Max Washington, Ed Bradley, you know, Ted Koppel, Dan Rather. But back in the 80s, there was no 24-hour news. There was no blog. There was no internet. And so if you weren't on one of the networks, you weren't anywhere. And so I went to college originally, to journalism school. I worked as a construction news reporter for McGraw-Hill for 5 years. And after 5 years and five promotions, I was still making, 18 grand. And I thought, I like sleeping indoors. I like eating regularly. This is not going to cut it. And so
uh-huh.
I went back to school. And it's funny that you asked that, because I looked at my yearbook not long ago, and in the part where it says future plans, I actually had journalism / law enforcement. So I've been so blessed. I've actually gotten to do both. And
Wow.
yeah, the lack of opportunity or at the time for journalism drove me back to law enforcement, and I
Hmm.
have no regrets about it. I'm so glad that things worked out the way they have.
Okay. And so you got into law enforcement. What was your first step getting into law enforcement?
Well, in Minnesota, it's a little bit different. This is one of the few states where you actually have to have a college degree to be a police officer.
Okay.
And I think some have come along since then, but I know Minnesota was one of the first. And so that forced me to go back to school, which is something, excuse me, that, I always wanted to finish because of all the sacrifice, my parents made for me. I mean, I grew up in the hood, but I went to private school. And so my sister, Tamara, teases me about that, all the time, because I actually couldn't get into the high school that she went to. She went to Cass Technical High School. I'm sure you'll have some viewers who are Cass Tech alum, and
Okay.
get in there. And my mother was furious with me because I didn't pass the entrance exam. And so, because math was not a strong suit for me. And so I flubbed the math part. At any rate, I wound up going to private school, and I felt like, and I still do, I said it earlier, I owe them, they sacrificed,
Mhm.
paid tuition for me. And back then, I did just enough. High school was a 4-year party for me. I was,
Oh, wow.
we were state champs, we were popular. And so I did just enough to get by. It wasn't until I had to pay tuition myself that I graduated cum laude. What a
Oh, okay.
when the money's coming out of your pocket, suddenly the motivation kicks in. But I wanted to make sure that I finished college, because that was their goal for me from day one. And it wasn't a matter of, if I would go, it was where. And so
Okay.
took me longer than they probably thought it should have, or me, but they were both alive and able to attend. my ceremonies, both from getting my bachelor's and my postgraduate degree. So.
Okay. I know you wanted to be an officer, so did you just apply?
No, actually, I'm sorry. You know what? I diverted myself. No, I actually started as an intern with the Dakota County Sheriff's Office because, again, the process here is arduous. At least it was back then. There would be 800 or 900 applicants for every job. And so whatever leg up I could get, I wanted to get and make sure, I had that in my arsenal, as it were. And so I started as an intern, and ironically, I was one of the first people of color that the new sheriff hired. He actually hired me and another guy at the same time because his reasoning was, boy, you're doing a disservice to bring, one person of color, or one female into an organization where everybody else is of a different ethnicity and gender. And that was sheer brilliance on his part. And so anyway, I worked as an intern for a year as a paid intern. And when that year was up, they hired me. And he looked after my career. His name's Don Gutmanson. He's a fantastic guy. He's retired now a couple of times, but he's been sheriff in 4 counties in this state and chief in 2. The guy knows how to run a police agency. And so I call him and he tears up when I say it, Coach Love, but he's my father in law enforcement. He taught me what I need to know about running a law enforcement agency. And so he's the kind of guy, one of his mottos was, I'm going to set you up for success, not failure. So I've modeled my career as an administrator after him.
So what kind of decisions does a chief make? What kind of decisions do you make?
All of them.
Okay.
I mean,
like what?
So, okay, the best part of my job is I'm the guy that gets to say yes, right? So when my staff comes to me and says, hey, chief, let's try this initiative, or let's try this engagement strategy, or let's do this, I get to say yes. And I like yes. And if it doesn't work, then we won't stick with a bad plan. We'll try something different. On the other hand, I have ideas too. I'm an idea man, Coach Love, and sometimes they work. And so I put those ideas out to my staff and I go, okay, this is what this looks like in my mind. What do you guys think, or work with it? And it's amazing. People ask me, well, what's your management style? It's very simple. I tell people what I need from them and what they can expect from me. And then I get out of their way and I let them do the job that I've hired them to do. And people will dazzle you when you don't micromanage them. We've all been, here's the thing. My dad used to say this, son, nobody's a bad example. Nobody's useless, I should say. They can always be a bad example. And so we've all worked for people that we don't want to be like, present company included. And so I vowed when I got to the top of my profession that I would not be that person. My job. So the long answer when you ask what kind of decisions do I make hiring decisions. I make firing decisions. I make budget decisions. I decide what gets purchased and what doesn't. I decide what initiatives go forward and which ones don't. I decide which training we're going to do. I decide what our squad cars look like.
Wow.
I mean, everything from soup to nuts. And I do that with the help of an incredible staff of people. So don't get me wrong. I don't know everything. And the important part is you don't have to know everything. You need to know everybody. And, what I don't know, I'm okay with that. Because to me, it's more important to know what you don't know than what you do. And so I surround myself with people who know things I don't. I don't like people on my staff that are just going to do whatever I tell them. I don't.
Okay.
To challenge me. I want them to go, I don't know about that. And here are all the reasons why that's not a good idea. Because guess what? A lot of times they're right. They keep me from walking off of a cliff. and they make me look like I really know what I'm doing. And I'm grateful to all of my staff for that. And I mean, all of them. I mean, from the people who sweep the floors in the PD all the way up to the administrative staff. We're a team, we're a family. So
That's beautiful. So the demographics of St. Cloud how would you describe those demographics?
changing, ever changing. St. Cloud, like most of Minnesota, was mostly white, even 25 or 30 years ago, and
Okay.
changed. We have a fairly decent East African population.
Mm-hmm.
We've got other folks of color. We've got Latino. We've got Asian. We actually have a huge map. There are people from all over the world because we have, I think, the fourth or fifth largest university in the state is in our city, and so
Okay.
international component to that. So we have people from all over the world at any
Okay.
time in our city, and so it's not what people would think of Minnesota, right? Typically, which is still 90-some% Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
It's a university town and it's a regional hub. We're smack dab in the middle of the state, and so we're the largest city in that whole region. And so everybody's represented in that city.
Okay. So in Minnesota, are you the only Black chief in Minnesota, or is there another one? Is there someone
Uh,
else?
there are four of us. Of
Okay.
the almost 500 police agencies, there are only four Black chiefs in the state. One in Minneapolis, myself, Roger New in Eagan, which is a suburb of St.
Uh-huh.
And Eddie Frizzell, who's the chief of Metro Transit. And I shouldn't leave these guys out. Our Department of Public Safety commissioner, which is part of the governor's cabinet,
Mm-hmm.
clearly one of the top law enforcement officers in the state, is a man of color.
Mm-hmm.
So is the assistant, John Harrington, former chief.
Mm-hmm.
Paul is the commissioner, and Booker Hodges the fourth. I should say Dr. Booker Hodges, his
Ah.
PhD, is the assistant commissioner. And Booker used to work for me back in the days of Dakota County, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
him too. So
That's great. That's great. And so do you believe that there is a brotherhood amongst you guys, or are all of you guys just kind of operating as it goes?
oh no, I mean, we've all gone through the same struggles, as human beings, as men of color, as law enforcement executives. We've got a support group, a network. We're all on speed
Okay.
so that we can vent to one another and share our experiences and share what we've used that has worked and what we've done that hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
We can help one another sidestep some landmines here and there, but yeah, no, we're not operating independently. In fact, I talk to those guys several times a week, some more than others, but yeah, we're always a phone call or a coffee shop away.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And like your team, so your police officers, what does the demographic of your police staff look like? What do they look like?
So we're about 20% female. In fact, the very first female who had full police powers, she wasn't the first female on staff, but back in the 50s, they didn't grant females full police powers. They had them handle stuff. I mean, you know how archaic our country is historically. Um, but this woman, her name's Ann Whitson. She was a sergeant when she retired, and I'm proud that I promoted her. Um, she retired last year after 30, I want to say 31 or 32 years of service, and she was the very first female with full police powers in the city of St. Cloud. So we're about
Mhm.
female. We're probably about, let's see, people of color, probably about 9 or 10%, which is reflective of the demographics in St. Cloud. But I have to put this little nugget on here, Coach Love. Of
Uh-huh.
Of the almost 11,000 police officers in the state of Minnesota, there less than 300 are people of color.
Less than 300?
Less than 300. And so Minneapolis and St. Paul, obviously, which are the major metropolitan areas in the state, most popular anyway, they account for more than 2/3 of that. So the rest of us are scattered throughout the state. And so when people ask, well, man, what are you doing to recruit and get more ethnic diversity? I'm like, we're working hard, but the pool just isn't that large.
So there is pressure for you to get more diversity in your police force. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say pressure, Coach Love, but certainly it's a question that comes up because people want their police departments to be reflective, of the demographics of their community. But my answer to them is simply this. I use the character-based hiring strategy, which was, is something that Dr. Hodges, whom I referenced earlier, and Dr. Matt Bostrom, who's the former sheriff of Ramsey County, came in their dissertations. And it's something that I've been doing all along as an administrator. I just called it something different. I want to hire the best person I can find. And I have a way of ferreting out the ones who just want to be cops because they got their butts kicked in the schoolyard. And so when I got there, one of my first orders of business was to get rid of the civil service exam because it was archaic. It was the same one, the same written test they were using, post-Vietnam. 10 people were always the top 10. And so my reasoning when I went to the civil service board was, okay, if I didn't hire them last year or the year before, I'm not going to hire them this year or next year.
Right.
So rid of that. And and I'm not one to complain without having a solution, Coach Love. And so in its place, I installed what I call an experience and education evaluation. And so I recruits or my candidates extra points if they've worked in a locked facility, whether it's a group home, whether it's in a facility, whether it's a jail, county, state, federal. I give them extra points if they've done an internship. And, when you're dealing with, public service hiring, those couple of extra points matter a lot.
Okay.
And then I asked the civil service board to let me have an internal process. And so some people say, you're giving them preferential treatment. I'm like, yep, you're damn right.
Yeah, I am.
I've already invested in them. They were interns with me. They moved into my part-time community service officer position. So yeah, they get dibs. I mean, for lack of a better way of saying it. And with that process and these 3 questions, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you this.
Okay.
Each candidate 3 questions. Why do you want to be a cop? And I've heard all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, it's a good job, well, strike 1.
Okay.
Question 2, what have you done in furtherance of that goal? I actually had one candidate tell me, well, I watch Cops and I read Soldier of Fortune, strike 2. The third and most important question is this: do you volunteer? Have you ever volunteered anywhere? And if the answer is no, I don't care how great they look on paper, their application goes in the trash. You're not going to do as well as you can in this profession if you've never done anything for somebody who can do absolutely nothing for you without expecting return. So now with that process, we've been able to get the kinds of folks that have the right temperament and the right character, because I don't know how to teach character, right? I can teach people the operational aspects of law enforcement, how to defend themselves, how to operate the car, in a safe manner during a pursuit. We can teach them all of that, but I can't teach people how to care about another person. I can't teach people how to be compassionate or empathetic. And if I could, I would give away the recipe, but I don't know how to do that.
Well, you've certainly figured out how to screen for it.
Absolutely. I will own that one. And it's one of the reasons why we do so well with our community engagement, because those are the kinds of people that we attract. And after a while, the agency sells itself. You don't have to market it.
Mm-hmm.
People
Mm-hmm.
want to come there, and we want the right kind of people. I don't care what they look like. I want
Mm-hmm.
to care about other human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
When people call us, they've submitted. They've said, whatever's going on, I can't handle this. I need you to help me. And the way I was raised is you don't kick people in the gut when they ask you for help. You help them. You
So
better when you left, when you leave than they were when you got there.
I got it. And that makes a lot of sense. So this is what you're doing right now, your screening process. You probably need to share that with like a lot of law enforcement. You need to spread that because a lot of organizations they hire for character first, and it sounds like you are hiring for character first, and you've gotten some definite questions um, to weed out people who are just kind of in it for the power.
Yes, absolutely. And those are the people that we don't want. I can't use them. And believe me, I have shared this all over the country. And I couldn't tell you how many folks have bought into it or not. I can tell you that I got some pushback from the unions, of course.
Mm,
Beginning.
really?
Oh, absolutely. To get rid of let's face it, it's human nature, right? Most things that are new for folks are scary, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to push back initially. But thank goodness our civil service board understood what it is I was trying to do, and
Mm-hmm.
presented it and marketed it. They got it, and they bought in. And so I'm not going to tell you it was easy
Mm-hmm.
beginning, but we got it done. And I couldn't be more pleased now because our process I would put up against anybody's. And here's the thing: once they're hired, they
Uh-huh.
still have to go through the training process. They still have to meet the standards and continue to meet and maintain our standards. And if they don't, they're out. And not everybody makes it. But at the same time, this job isn't for everybody. There are people
Okay.
they wanted to do this job since they were knee high. And, once they're in the thick of it, their boots are on the ground, they realize, boy, this isn't like TV. And I tell them, yeah, no, we don't get it figured out in 43 minutes without commercials. This is not CSI.
This is so let's pretend that because I really like this human resource aspect that we're talking about with the job because one of my biggest hmm, I'm just going to say I'm going to call it a concern. What puts a knot in my stomach is that overall when I think of not just policing but big systems overall where there is power, there is not a good way to screen out bullies. And you can pick any profession that has power. For instance, um, the the Catholic priesthood, they did not have a good way to screen out bullies, and as a matter of fact, because of the power associated with it, what happened is they began to protect the bullier. So they would just move the bullier. And policing is one of those professions that has a reputation that it's actually earned for protecting the bullier. You know, um, they're not alone. I could pick on the Boy Scouts and, like I said, Catholic priests, or unfortunately, foster parents, things of that nature. It's just a lot. I could just keep going on and on and on. But anytime there is a lot of power with a position, there is often um, a protective process to keep that person insulated from experiencing consequences.
And so here I have two answers for that. The first one is this, and this is what's worked for me, and this is how I stave that off. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I manage people where they are. It's another one of one of my mantras, if you will.
Mhm.
We don't move a problem employee to another unit or another division or to another department in the city.
Mhm.
Manage them where they are, and if they're not cutting it, then fine. I get paid to make unpopular decisions. And
Mhm.
so if if you're not responding to the coaching or the training or whatever it is we're trying to provide you so that you are not poisonous to our work environment, then you've got,
Mhm.
and I don't have a sense of humor about that. You absolutely have to go. And if I have to fight with the unions, and I'm no union buster, I was born in Detroit, the cradle of the American labor movement. So I'm cool with that. I used to be a union steward, but
Okay.
right is right and wrong is wrong. The other way I try to stave that off is at the beginning of our officers training process when they come in for our 10-week in-house cadet program. I,
Mhm.
I let them know few things will get them blowtorched by me. Fewer things will than stripping another human being of his or her dignity. We do
Ah.
that. We have very few rules. I do, but they are not negotiable.
Mhm.
That one is at the top of the list. We do not strip human beings of their dignity. And so if you do, you're going to have to come see me, and it's not going to be a pleasant visit. And so now, have a lot of people had to come and see me? No. Why? Because we screen people that have the right temperament so that that doesn't happen as often for us as it does in other places. The other thing I tell them is this. And you mentioned this, we have a lot of power, right?
Mhm.
And we work in and live in a free society, right? And the best
Uh-huh.
of that is you can move about, right? You can go. I tell my cadets in America, you can go wherever your wit and your wallet will take you, right? You can get in your car tomorrow and go, you know what? I'm in New York, but I'm driving to California tomorrow. I got enough money for gas and hotels, food, whatever, and you can go until some clown like me is not satisfied with what he or she sees versus what you're telling us, and we can restrict your movement. And so my point in saying all that is to say this: that kind of power should be treated with reverence. It
Mhm.
should not be abused. It should not be capricious. And recognizing that this uniform that we wear is a symbol of a lot of things. And I've said this a gazillion times. Anybody who's heard me speak has heard me say this. It's representative and symbolic of sacrifice, of service, of heroism, of bravery. But to other people, it's representative of oppression and tyranny and terrorism. And so we have to all remember and be mindful of all of those things when we're dealing with people, because most people don't call us when they're having their best day. Let's just keep
Mhm.
some,
Mhm.
something wrong is happening, something bad is going on. And when they call us again, they have submitted and asked for help. And it's our job to make it better. And that sounds corny as hell, but that's me. That's why I became a police officer, to make things better, to make the world safer, man, for kids, especially because somebody did it for me. And I owe people I never met. I owe your ancestors. I owe mine. I owe all kinds of people because they sacrificed way more than we ever had to. No matter how bad things have been in the last year, 2, 10, 20, 50, there are people who sacrificed far more than we ever had to and got way less. And so
Mhm.
I keep those folks with me in my pocket every day. And
Mhm.
I try and repay a little bit of that debt every day, Coach.
You are such a good representation for police officers. And talking to you and hearing your heart, it's beautiful. But at the same time, with you being the way you are, it makes me wonder how in the world do we still live in a place where someone gets pulled over and they actually get strip searched on the side of the road?
I need an easier question. I'm just being honest. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
come on. I mean, we know historically what has gone on in our country. And listen, I'm a veteran, 8 years in the United States military.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a patriot. I'm a corny patriot, but I have not disavowed myself of the facts that, our country was built on tyranny and terrorism, particularly towards folks who look like us. And so if I had the answer for why that still is happening, I would give it away for free. I don't. I just know that, you know, it's a learned behavior. And the
Mm-hmm.
only thing in my experience on this planet that changes people's hearts and minds are events, and specifically events that happen in their lives. That's the best I got for you, Coach.
It's, you know what? I'm not even, I really can't fix the past. No one can fix the past except our creator, the inventor of time and all. Um, what concerns me is the continual pop up of really degrading, debasing behavior. And like, if I was a chief, I would almost want to get on the phone and call the chief of that department. Can you tell me what's going on over there? Can you tell me why you didn't fire those people? Can you please have your people quit embarrassing my people? Because you want to know what? You're making it dangerous for my people. What your cops did makes people hate my cops.
I've had some of those conversations, but truth be told, I already know the answers. And so we're assuming that a lot of those chiefs haven't tried to, but they have.
Well,
One
I
of the
know the unions are involved. I do know that. Is that the big issue?
It's
The
huge.
union.
It's huge. In our state, I have gone round and round. I have testified before a couple, three subcommittees on police reform at our legislature. And the things that they're proposing in terms of police reform to me are not sensible, and they're not meaningful, and they're not sustainable. One of the biggest problems that we have as administrators in Minnesota, I can only speak for Minnesota, is the binding arbitration system. There are many chiefs who have tried to get rid of problem employees or folks who have no business being in this profession,
Mm-hmm.
be made to take them back by an
Mm-hmm.
arbitrator's decision. And every time an arbitrator makes a decision, it sets a precedence. So the next person who does the same thing, you're going to have an even more difficult time getting rid of that person. Now, here's what else I know, Coach Love. The vast majority of police officers in America, and I need people to hear me when I say this because I mean it. I've been doing this for 26 years, are doing this job the right way for the right reasons. And I know that sometimes I get into trouble when I say this because people think that, I'm dismissive of victims or people who have died at the hands of police, but I'm not. What people need to understand is simply this. If we want to deal with facts, let's deal with facts. I'm going to keep it real. Tens of millions of police contacts every year in this country go down. Very few of them result in any force being used, let alone lethal force. And so
Mm-hmm.
my question rhetorically is, why are we all being painted with the same broad brush that should be applied to a few? Especially now, listen, as a man of color, police chief or not, I know what that feels like to be judged by your worst element. I know what it feels like to be stereotyped. So as a man of color in blue, I know what that feels like too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Need to realize there is a human being inside that uniform, and not every,
Mm-hmm.
we don't wake up and spin the wonder wheel and decide we're going to shoot somebody in the head. I mean, that's just not reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I only say that because it seems like the vast majority of police officers are being forgotten right now. because of the misdeeds of a few. And nobody hates a bad cop more than a good one. To your point,
Mhm.
you're making it more difficult for me to do my job. You're making it more difficult for me to engage or to reach certain aspects of my community because of something you did, and you live, you're 1,500 miles away from me. And
Mhm.
it's a big frustration for me. But the long answer is a lot of folks, have tried. And guess what? I'm not making excuses for the ones who don't, who accept the status quo. But I've been doing this long enough to know that sometimes, man, we're caught up in the vortex of bureaucracy, for lack of a better way of putting it. Yeah.
So, what I understand for sure is that most cops are good. I really do understand that. I have a very good relationship with the police in my neighborhood. I had good relationships with police uh, going growing up. That wasn't my issue. That said, I will say the same thing about people. The vast number of people are good. Most people are good. I'm going to tell you something else. Most people who go into politics are good. This is the issue. There is no good system for capturing the bad. And when you ask, why is there a broad brush? I don't feel the broad brush, but I know you do because it's out there and that narrative is out there about police. But I will say this, we don't have a good system for getting rid of the toxicity, the ones that are bullying, actively actively bullying, the ones that are misusing their power. And you can just watch video after video after video, not the ones that come on television. I mean, you got a guy in a wheelchair, you're dumping him out. You have somebody laying on the ground showing you their hands and you shoot them. You're beating up somebody who's in handcuffs. Those are bad things and they're absolutely unacceptable. Are they representative of uh, the 90 percentile? No. But are they allowed to stay? Yes. And that's the problem, that
Eh,
they are allowed to stay.
Agreed. And so, you know what? How I've consoled myself after having this conversation more times than I can count. The conclusion I've come to is that's when it becomes a leadership issue.
So I agree with you. And I was really thinking that when you were explaining to me, number one, how you screen, I was thinking, how come this isn't nationwide? How come all police chiefs and decision makers who are making those hiring decisions aren't screening for this? And then the other thing I started to think about and wonder, maybe the union should have the power to talk about pay. They should have the uh, power to talk about like leave, like if you need a maternity leave or family care leave or family medical leave, all of that kind of stuff. But unions probably should not be able to get your job back if you have been fired for a reason of um, violence against community. So let's say I get fired because so and so doesn't like me. Okay, they can get your job back. But if you get fired for violence against community or excessive force against community, then that shouldn't be allowed. Now, I'm just hearing this, so maybe there's some really good reason why that can't be done. But perhaps in the contract negotiation with the unions, that is, if you get fired for that, no, they cannot help you. And then in addition to that, not only can they not help you, but now there's some kind of tracking system. So you can't go from St. Cloud to Detroit and get a brand new job as a police officer. If you get fired for that kind of abuse, you should not be able to be in positions of power like that. And so I don't know if we need to, big reforms. It sounds like we need to really tweak what we have to make it impactful.
Would you come to our state legislature with me, because I have been making these arguments for more years than I can count, because it is not rocket surgery, Coach Love. It really is.
Mhm.
I have said here, and here's the way I said it. Essentially, you just said the same thing. Um, I'm fine with the unions and collective bargaining for things that the only reason we have unions is because historically, right, corporations, business owners, whether they were public, private, were tyrannical, right, and so
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
strength in numbers, got it. 100% I'm down with that, but everything ought not be worthy of arbitration, and that's
Right.
where we are now. And so essentially what I proposed to a group of our state legislators was simply that. Let's listen. Let's let's have a progressive ladder, if you will, of what is and isn't worthy of arbitration. Because
Mhm.
some acts that are committed that are so egregious that we don't need to go through the progressive process. You need to be gone. And there are others that, boy, they might be questionable, or it might be subjective or whatever. And so let's ferret that out and let's do what's equitable. You notice I don't use the word fairness, because that's a subjective term. It means
Mhm.
different people, at least in my mind. And it's like talking to a brick wall.
Mhm.
They're busy focusing on things that are not sensible, sustainable, or meaningful, in my opinion. That's my opinion, and I'm only talking about my state when it comes to the binding arbitration system.
I get you, but when we don't think do things surgically, then we can paint things with a broad brush and make really silly arguments um about things, because like the whole idea that, you know, you're either pro cop or you're no, or either you're either pro blue lives matter or you're pro black lives matter, that they clash, is a very silly argument, because you really can't make that argument well, because there are cops that are black, you know, and there are cops that you just can't. It's a silly argument. That said, the problem is not a person's color. The problem is people who have problems with other people's race are allowed to remain in those positions.
100%. And again, if I had the answer for that, I told you I would give it away. It's
I think we I think we're kind of talking through the answer. I hope somebody's listening that can make real changes, because it frustrates me when I hear a take a get an argument and it's all of a sudden political. I thought it was very interesting, as many times as you would see like a cop hanging out with, you know, kids and kids in people of color, kids in neighborhoods. You see all these volunteers and all these kinds of programs. So all of a sudden, you know, there's this made up narrative, and one is for the Democratic side and one is for the Republican side, and it forced people to fit in a box that didn't even really make sense. It
oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You weren't finished. My bad.
No, I was just it just did not make sense, but you're forced to choose a side. And when you're forced to choose a side and something really significant happens, like January 6th, then all of a sudden you have the people who you thought were on your side fighting the people who are on the same side. And you want to know what? That's because there never was really a side.
Well, 100%. And again, that's why I'm blessed that I was raised to seek out your own information. Number one, check what you've been told and what you've heard, and then go and seek out what actually happened. Number one, that's how my mom raised us, and more importantly, you take people how they come to you, no matter what
Mm-hmm.
they're wrapped in. Let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you a quick story. You want to talk about frustration?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Last summer, after the riots in Minneapolis, and we all witnessed
Mm-hmm.
what happened and what sparked that, and it was
Uh-huh.
gut wrenching, and it was appalling, and it was abhorrent. I could go on and on. One of my police officers was shot.
Mm.
White cop shot by a young black guy. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really important because that officer, and people have asked me this question, well, when is it appropriate for an officer to use deadly force? Well, that's a textbook case right there. He was shot,
Mm-hmm.
right? Foot chase,
Right.
got into a physical struggle, guy pulls out a gun, shoots my officer. My officer didn't shoot him back, and with the help of his partners, they were still able to get that young man in custody. Now,
Mm-hmm.
had they shot him, whether they killed him or not, they would have been justified and I would have had their back. But here's the reason I'm telling this story. Within minutes, somebody put on Facebook that we, St. Cloud Police, had shot two young black men in the head.
Mm-hmm.
One was dead, one was clinging to life. Right? Before I had a chance to gather all the information, somebody put that out there, and that caused 3 days of unrest in our city, which we got under control. But my point is, to your point, I don't have the answer for how to stop that from happening, because why would somebody do something like that? Because clearly
Mm-hmm.
they had already picked a side without knowing any of the facts, right? They picked a
Did they
side.
get arrested? Did that person get arrested?
We got that person charged, but you can't unring the bell. That night, we had people storming the police department trying to destroy it, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
and I did the press conference that night, and I said those words. If you ever seen it, if I appeared angry, if I appeared pissed off, and
Mm-hmm.
is because because I don't understand that kind of mentality, and why people would do something like that. To your point, why people just arbitrarily pick a side and go, well, it must be this way because this is my ideology. Well, we're in big trouble if we can't figure out a way to get past that.
So the I want to go down this road because when you're a civilian, there is a avenue for for that behavior. So was the person charged or not? I'm
Yes,
how do, okay. So they were charged and they will probably at least experience some restitution and maybe some time in jail.
maybe.
And
Maybe.
maybe some time in jail, but I'm just looking at the criminal court system, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, but civil court, you guys can easily prove damages, and this person did that. I mean, it's kind of, you'll be paying for that.
Yep, but good
So,
luck collecting. I mean, I'm not trying to be a contrarian. Good luck
mhm.
collecting.
Well,
But
you
to
know
me,
what?
the larger point, Coach Love, is that mentality exists, that somebody would do something so dangerous. Because to me, it's not just stupid; it's dangerous. That is dangerous.
So yes, I agree it's dangerous, and trust me, the government will get their money. As long as
Well, they
that
usually
person,
do, right? They usually do.
exactly, the government will get their money, and so that person will suffer. They will suffer for sure. Okay, so I think we've gone as far as we can go. We've shed some light. Honestly, I hope somebody who can make some decisions. Um, I'm pro-union. I love unions, but it sounds like there are things that the unions should not be involved in. There's just some decisions that they should not be making. Perhaps that's the ticket.
100%. And you know what? You did ask me a couple of questions here. Now I want to try to address a couple. I know we've got some limited time here. Boy, if I
Oh,
did
I'm
one
going
of
to
them.
get to him. But which
Oh,
one are you dying to answer? Which one over there are you dying to answer?
um, I'll be honest here. Let me scroll down and look. Well, my TED talk, not because it's gratuitous, but it's because I want people to go, and I do. I want people to look at it. It was one of my dreams to do that, and to have been asked to do that was literally a dream come true. And it's only 12 minutes, which was the difficult part for me, because if your listeners don't know by now, I certainly can prattle on, but to be restricted to 12 minutes in the TED format was a heck of an experience. And at the end, you have to make an ask. And, my ask was that we just be kinder and nicer to each other, as corny as that sounds. So this is gratuitous, but it's on YouTube. If anybody wants to see it, just look up Chief Anderson's kindness app. And that's who I am. That's how I was raised. The other one is, if I could accomplish three things as chief before I transition to the next part of my journey, the answer is I already have. I have a great succession plan, so St. Cloud PD doesn't have to go outside for at least 25 years unless they really want to. That's how confident I am in my staff. Community engagement is a priority, and not just with the police department, but with the entire community. It starts at City Hall with our mayor, with Dave Kleiss, with Matt Staling, our city administrator. And the third thing is simply that people see and appreciate the people in blue or brown or whatever color that they're wearing that are willing to step into harm's way for them, whether they know them or not. And that's what I know about cops and law enforcement. They don't have to do you. They will step into harm's way for you, and they will do it selflessly, and they will do it without asking for parades or awards or anything, because that's what we do.
So I have a question. Do you have dinner waiting? Are you trying to run off from
Nope,
me?
absolutely not. Oh no,
Okay. Okay. You know what?
absolutely not.
This is a really good conversation. So, family, thank you for sticking in here with us. But what we've done is really we're giving this subject matter the time that it deserves. We're unpacking it. We're not jumping to conclusions. We're not living on sound bites. That is the liberty that we have the
I love it.
opportunity to have here.
I
We
thought you
don't
were
have.
giving me a cue, Coach Love. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. I was really just kind of wrapping up that kind of particular question, because the reality is um, we need leadership who chase character. This is what I got out of chat so far. Our leadership needs to chase character. And I think you should give those three questions again. What are they?
Why do you want to do this job? What have you done in furtherance of it? And have you volunteered? And,
Mm-hmm.
and the answers I'm looking for, because there are specific answers, to question number one, I want to hear people say and mean that they want to make a difference, that they want to make the world safer for people, that they want to use the platform that we have and the power we have for good. One of the most important things I heard, when you go to graduation, there's 100 speakers. You don't remember what any of them said. I remember
Mm-hmm.
this alone from the president of the college I graduated from. You're in a privileged position to have gotten a formal education. Use your education for good to help other humankind. So that's what I want to hear, right, from candidates.
Okay.
The second question, what have you done in furtherance? Listen, I've done an internship. I've done ride-alongs. I've read about the profession. I have um, observed what's going on in my community, and there are some things that I think I have some answers to that I can be helpful in helping solve.
Mm-hmm.
And that can go on and on. And most importantly, again, I don't care what they say to the first two questions. I don't care what their answers are. If
Mm-hmm.
number three is not yes, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It seem unfair, but your application's going in the trash. If you've never volunteered anywhere, you've never done
Right.
anything, you can't give me one example of what you've done for somebody who can do nothing for you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I'm sorry, I can't, and I won't lower our standards, especially now. And yeah, guess what? We're all suffering. Applications are down. Nobody wants to get into law enforcement right now.
Well, you know what? Applications probably wouldn't be suffering if there was a higher quality of um, police officer. Like if it lived out what it really meant, because it's so magnificent. Being a police officer, being able to save a life, being able to rush in when there is trouble afoot, and being responsible, and being having the authority to save. Do you know how amazing that is?
I do actually.
Of course you
Yes,
do.
I do, and it's one of the things that that I'm most proud of. My sister Tamara gets on me because she goes, "My God, you never take credit for anything that you've done, and you're just so humble." And it's not false humility, but yeah, I know. I know what it feels like when you answer a call and when you leave, people are better off than they were when you got there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
alive, and that's not me being dramatic. That's not hyperbole. We have the opportunity every time we answer a call to make things better,
Mm-hmm.
folks, than
Mm-hmm.
they were before we got the call. And I'm going to be that corny guy until I retire. That's always my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, Coach Love. That may be the only interaction a person has ever had with a police officer. It may be their first one, it may be their only one. And so, again, I ask my officers, do you want to leave an impact or an impression? I'd rather leave an impression because an impact is too aggressive for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather leave an impression, and I'd rather leave a positive impression, no matter the circumstances. And so, if you lead with that, if you lead from a standpoint of humanity and dignity and empathy, you just cannot go wrong. There's no job that's better than this. Despite
Mm-hmm.
the nonsense we've endured in the last year, and it's fine. In St. Cloud, that's not happening. Our folks embraced it,
Yeah,
and
I I
I'm
can
proud
tell
of
you
that.
guys are doing good.
Oh, we're doing our best, man, and
Mm-hmm.
people respond. And the other thing, Coach Love, people, you know, people are different. People are funny. We could say a gazillion things about people, but here's the thing: people will support what you give them an opportunity to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we don't go in and tell our community, here's what we're gonna do. We ask,
Mm-hmm.
what do you all need here in this
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood? Because it might be different than another neighborhood in our city, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
people support what they you let them help create, and I'm a firm believer in things like that. Not because it sounds good, because I've seen it. It works, and it can
I
be there.
I know it works because you have quite a magnificent program that you're working on. I'm just going to say this to all the people who are in service industries that are almost like ministries: nursing, physicians, all of those. It's like it's almost like it's a ministry. When you're a minister and you are the person, um, I'm in women's ministry. I'm not, I'm not a preacher or anything like that, but I do serve my community. Um, and when you're the person, you yourself, you have to go to work, but somebody is on their deathbed, and so you're sitting up with the family, and now the person, it's 4, it's 5, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. You got to be at not there, at work at 9, and you're making that personal sacrifice because you're with the family. Okay. You have to have a sacrificing kind of mindset. Okay. But if a trusted person misuses that trust, for instance, there was a nurse and he was fondling um, older women. He was having sex with older women. And if nursing didn't get rid of that person, there would be a bad reputation for nursing. When ministers steal money, they get a bad reputation. So if somehow we keep people who abuse power, we will kill the honor attached to the profession, and then people will no longer be attracted to it. So all of us, not just policemen, not just firemen, not just preachers or nurses, all of us, anybody who is in a position that requires a sacrifice and which attracts power, let's start policing ourselves. Do not let those who are abusing their power stay there. Speak up and say something. And that's my bottom line on that.
Agreed. Again, back to my point, nobody hates a bad cop more than a good one. I'm sure the same is true for nurses or ministers, or anybody who's making sacrifices for other people. So
Mm-hmm.
100%. I can't find any fault with that, and I can only mess it up if I keep talking.
So now I want to know about this really cool program that you have partnered with some really smart folks to develop. First, I want to talk about your partners, and then I want to talk about the actual program.
All right.
Go. What is this program you have?
Well, which one? We have so many.
The one thing, so you have a program that we talked about some time ago, and basically it's community policing, and you
Are you
build
talking about
up.
fries?
I think that's the name of it. Basically, what you do is you have these kids that you work with, and you they keep going into the community over and over again to the point where they graduate.
Oh well, that's our youth leadership academy. I mean, and when I tell you we have a lot, we have a lot of programs. But I think what you were talking about was Prize, because remember you connected me with Fallon. Uh,
Yes. Okay. Yes.
so that was Prize. Um, that is a program that we started for kids with an incarcerated loved one or caregiver, right? Through the
Okay. Okay.
and it was intended to be a 12-week program on Saturdays, but kids didn't want to give up their Saturday mornings. And so we approached the school district and they loved it. And we presented the curriculum to them, which was
Mhm.
written by a woman named Mandy Crennan and one of my sergeants. And they wrote the curriculum. And again, I got to say yes.
There
And
you go.
the school district actually found a way to give the kids credits for this based on the curriculum,
Mhm.
because the only option we had left was to do it during school hours. And
Okay.
we did it during the lunch hour, but it extended over. So we provided the meal, the PD did, and it's all about. So PRIZE is an acronym that is promoting resilient youth through support and education. So it's
Mhm.
PRE, and it gives them coping mechanisms. And one of the main tenets is that here, it's okay to be angry. It's okay
Mhm.
to be hurt. It's okay to be embarrassed. It's okay to feel like the whole world is crashing down on you because of your circumstances and you didn't create them, right? Your mom, your dad, your caregiver is locked up. And, having siblings who've been locked up, I know how that feels. When somebody you love goes to prison, you go with them because you work
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And so that program is a semester long program. And at the end, the kids have a whole bunch of tools in their toolbox to cope. So I've already told you the things we tell them that are okay. It's okay to be angry, embarrassed, hurt, whatever, but it's not okay to let those emotions fuel your decision making. And so we don't just tell them that, we give them some ways to cope with that when they get angry or when they feel embarrassed or, when they're hurt. And I could go on and on and on. That's one of probably 24 youth initiatives that we have, but it's been very successful. This is year number 3. And in fact, Fallon, the woman that you put in contact with me and Mandy Crennan actually met last
Mm-hmm.
week in St. Louis. Fallon wrote that wonderful book. And
Yeah.
those two have already collaborated to expand the program. So thank you for that, Coach Love.
My pleasure. My
We
pleasure.
appreciate that. But I mean, those are the kinds of things that I'm trying to use this platform for. We've got a youth leadership academy that's a week-long academy. It serves at-risk kids. And when people say, well, who's an at-risk kid? My response is any of them if we don't intervene, right? As adults,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
money their parents have, rich kids get strung out on drugs and, the streets find them too. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a week-long program that's based on 3 tenets: respect, responsibility, and trust. And the mantra is, building better citizens through early and sustained intervention. We want the
Mm-hmm.
kids to be good community members, not clients of ours at the PD. I don't want to have to arrest them from the time they're 18 until they're 50 because I've done that. And so
Mm-hmm.
we can intervene and change the trajectory, of where they're going, all the better. And the thing about stuff like that is there are detractors who think, well, you're throwing good money after bad. No, it's not. We that program costs us about $12,000 a year, and
Mm-hmm.
these kids don't pay a dime for anything. Not for
Okay.
the excuse me, not for the food, not for the uniforms, anything that we require, we foot the bill for, along with very, very generous business owners and community leaders in our community, because at the end of the day, we're all responsible for what our communities look like, right? And so,
Absolutely.
anything, the transportation, we get cars and vans donated, we get buses from, the school district, the uniforms they wear, the local screen print shop will, donate or give us such a discounted rate that they might as well give them to us for free. Macy's, Herberger's, big department stores dress the kids for graduation because we have a huge graduation at the end of the program, and they learn every
Mm-hmm.
conflict resolution to table etiquette because,
Oh, that's fabulous.
oh, for sure, right? Because how do we know which one the salad fork is, Coach Love? Somebody taught us. These kids
Yes.
are being taught that. They're living in really tough circumstances. And so we teach them the value of respecting themselves first and then respecting other people. We teach them the value of being part of a team, of working collaboratively to solve problems. We teach them the value of not letting their anger and where they are in life currently dictate where they continue to go. And I'm telling you, there ain't a dry eye in the house, Coach Love, at graduation. And I mean the kids or the cops, because all of my cops serve as the staff during this camp. We take them to
Mm-hmm.
the military base and we are embedded. We stay with them for the whole week. We're with them from the minute they get up in the morning until we put them to bed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We get them up at 5:30 in the morning and lights out at 10 p.m. And
Wow.
so, there's a nutrition component, there's a physical fitness component, there's a teamwork component, there's classroom work. We do one for girls, and that's a little bit different. And so that's about healthy relationships, right? And making choices. And, it's, I could go on and on and on, but this is where
Now,
I joy from.
now, I want to know about that one for girls, and I want to know about you don't have a healthy relationship one for guys? How does that work?
No, it's not that, but it's here's what. It took us longer to get the girls program developed
Mm.
because I'm not a female and
Oh,
I was not about to even intimate that I knew what a 13 to 16-year-old girl needed in her life being
mm-hmm.
a male. And so
Okay.
I let my female officers develop that program and that protocol. So certainly there are components that match, that overlap in both programs. But I'll be
Mm-hmm.
for the boys, it's more about keeping them out of the streets. It's more about them, and so let me answer it this way: the healthy relationship part for boys is the respect aspect. It's all about how to respect people, especially females. For the girls, it's about recognizing when you're being respected or disrespected, if that makes any
Mm-hmm.
sense to you. So,
Well, I will say this, an important lesson for anybody to learn, male or female, is appropriate boundaries. That is very important. Now, when it comes to being a woman, we're literally taught to be nice. We're literally taught to be, kind and respectful, and to, um, I don't want to say suppress our feelings, but to be very considerate of others. It's just that we're constantly being reminded to be that way. Whereas, fellas, oftentimes you're not reminded to be that way. For that reason, women sometimes don't have really healthy boundaries.
well, and it's archaic. You're right, but it's archaic. And so, for those of us who were blessed to have been raised right, uh,
Hmm.
I was raised the same way, to be considerate of other people's feelings, right? To be empathetic, to understand that you can't just do or say whatever you want to, um,
Hmm.
in your maleness. Although and let's be real, I'm a black male, but I know I have privileges because I'm a male that you as
Hmm.
a male don't have, but
Hmm.
caught up in that nonsense, right? Because that's what it is. At the end of the day, we're all human beings first, and so you need to be considerate, you need to be kind, you need to be empathetic, you need to be understanding. And one of the best lines I heard, I don't read a lot of the books that are written for corporate types by other corporate types, but Stephen Covey had a
Oh, I
line.
love him. He's my
I,
favorite.
I do too. I do. But he had a line, and I hope I don't mess it up. It's better to understand than to try and be understood.
It is seek
I
to
love it.
understand, then seek to be understood. But it's still
Yeah.
fabulous. I know what you're
Right.
talking about.
Right. I was trying not to mess it up, Coach Love, but and so those are things that stick with me, and those are the things that we try to impart to these kids who are in really tough circumstances. And at the end of the week, I can tell you, at the beginning of the week, they don't want to be there. They would rather be anywhere else because I mean, we put them through it. They got to work for that certificate that they get at the end, and I mean literally, they have to work physically, mentally, emotionally. We break them down into small groups at the end of the evening, and the cool part about it is my school resource officers serve as the cadre. Why? Very deliberate, because they're going to see these kids in school. We do it at the end of the summer. And so there's a mentoring component that goes with this. So once the camp is over, we continue to mentor those kids until they graduate from high school. And so what better way to do that than to have the officers who are gonna be in their schools every single day and see them. And it is amazing when kids will be kids and I don't know, around October they might start cutting up and the principal or somebody will go, do you want me to call officer so and so? Because they remember them from the academy.
Mm-hmm.
Me to call Chief Anderson, and I'm telling you, principals have called me and said, you know what? One of your Skylar kids here is just they're struggling right now. So could you come and talk to them? Absolutely. Be right.
Mm-hmm.
And because we built that rapport,
Mm-hmm.
we can talk to those kids and remind them that you've already done a great deal of work and sacrifice, and you belong to a fraternity now that's elite. You're a Skyla kid, and Skyla is an acronym for St. Cloud Youth Leadership Academy. So
Okay.
you're a Skyla kid now, so the expectations for you are higher. The bar is high.
Mm-hmm.
You earn that, but you have to maintain that. And
Mm-hmm.
we save them all, Coach Love? Of course not. But we save enough of them where it continues to be meaningful. And this is year 20, probably 22 for me with that. I retired last year because I would go too. I'd stay up with them for a week in the barracks, Spartan conditions, and just hang out and get to know these kids and let them be kids because they don't get to be kids given the circumstances they're in. And two, they get to see us in a different way before there's a crisis. Because
Mm-hmm.
with uniform, they get to see that there's a human being and that person cares about them. Because, listen, I could be at home in my comfortable bed, but I'm here with you. I'm living in the same conditions you are. It's hot as hell out here, but I'm marching with you. I'm eating this cafeteria food with you. We are in this together. It is the coolest thing I've ever gotten to do as a police officer.
So this happens once a year. Is that how that goes?
Yes.
Okay.
20 kids, we get 20 kids a year. I have 10 staff. And the reason we do that is so we have a decent staff to kid ratio so that kids get the attention that they need.
So you've been doing this for 20 plus years, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For
So
sure.
have students now, come back and what are your success stories look like there?
Success story. We have a kid who, again, because of that kid's zip code and circumstances, was supposed to either be locked up or dead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Graduated from college and is doing well now. We have kids that have enlisted in the military, and some have become career military folks already.
Mm-hmm.
We have kids who have gotten into law enforcement who hated the police when we came in contact with them. And so I could go on and on. We have kids who have gone into the banking industry. We also have some kids who they did the best they could, but they couldn't overcome the circumstances and the demons. And so we take the bitter with the sweet, but we have plenty of kids. And the coolest thing is this, when those kids see us, especially the ones from the earlier classes, right, who are now, the age group is 13 to 16. So I've got kids that I've worked with who are now, 30. And I will see them somewhere and I don't remember them because they've grown up, they're grown-ups. And it's not that I don't remember them. I know their face, but they have to tell me because we give them all a handle. We give them a nickname, right? Whatever remind us of. And so I'll ask them, what's your handle? And they'll say, oh, well, Maytag. Well, we gave the kid tag because, he would fix his mom's washer whenever it would break. Whatever.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, Maytag. Now I know who you are. And they can't wait to show me pictures of their kids or their wives. They can't wait to say, man, I'm working here, or I'm working 2 jobs and finishing school or whatever. And that's all that matters, right? They don't have to conquer the whole world at once. I just need them to be decent, responsible citizens and break the cycle that they were in. That's my goal for them.
That's awesome. Now, I do want to talk about a program that you have that you're working on, or it's already in place for latchkey kids.
Which one is that?
Well, you know what? I can't remember all the
Do
names
you
of
mean
the.
the community outpost?
Okay, perhaps that's it. But basically, it's one for latchkey kids to keep them
Well,
off the street.
it's for the entire neighborhood, but I think that's our community outpost. And so we deliberately picked a neighborhood um, and a spot that was, for lack of a better way of saying it, a real pain in our rear end. Seriously, it was a pain in the ass, Coach Love. And
Uh-huh.
we had 100 calls for service at this place, and so with the help of the St. Cloud Rotary, the business community, U.S. Bank, data marketing, I could go on and on. The Central Minnesota builders community, we were able
Mm-hmm.
to buy that property, bulldoze it, build a new place, which is our outpost, and that has now become an oasis in the desert because this is in one of our more indigent neighborhoods. It has a large East African population, and
Mm-hmm.
we we asked those people, instead of telling them, we asked what they needed there. And so that has driven the programming in that place. And it's everything from ESL classes to breastfeeding classes, sewing classes, financial literacy classes. We do mobile dental clinics that are free, mobile health clinics. We've done over 500
Amazing.
with the help of Stearns County Public Health. You name it, it's been done there. And sometimes we just fling the doors open and pull the grill out and feed the kids. And so when the kids get off the bus, right, the bus stops right in front of the place. It's not a police substation, it is a community outpost, but it is staffed
Okay.
by police officers. The kids get off the bus and they run in there to see what's going on for the day. There might be a reading workshop. There's a program that my officer started called Women of Worth, and it is a mentoring program for young girls.
Mm-hmm.
School homework programs. There's a gardening club. There's sport. We got black kids on hockey skates. Coach Love, you hear me?
I gotcha.
This is what my officers and my staff do because it's wintertime and they're like, okay, these kids are cooped up in the house. We need them to come outside. And these are
Yeah,
the folks. So guess what? They made a phone call and the Herb Brooks Foundation donated hockey skates, sticks, equipment. I mean, hockey is a very expensive sport.
it is.
They donated not once, but twice. And I'm not talking about substandard equipment. And
Mm-hmm.
this is how St. Cloud rolls, right? When you fly the bat flag, the bat signal, people respond because they get that we're all responsible for what our community looks like. And it's, man, it's one of the things that it gives me goosebumps because it can be done. I mean, it's, oh my God, it can be done because we're doing it.
You know what? Somebody call Joe Biden and tell them that Chief Blair needs to give classes on how to help the community work. Somebody make this happen.
So let me say this too, because I would be remiss. So Congressman Tom Emmer, who represents
Mm-hmm.
the district, has introduced a bill on the House floor
Okay.
to get the DOJ to appropriate money so that community outposts can be built all over America.
All right. I
Right?
love
Because
it.
there's no propriety on it. There is a how-to book that was written by a nonprofit called Safe and Sound uh,
Okay.
out of Milwaukee, and it's a how-to, right? Here's what you do, here's what you don't do. I mean, we set up a 501c3 foundation to get,
Uh-huh.
There are no public officials on it, no city employees, no police officers, none of that. It's made up of community members and
Mm-hmm.
actively run the house. The house doesn't belong to the city. It doesn't belong to the county or the state. It belongs to the foundation board. And so we've gotten major benefactors. U.S. Bank is one, Falcon National Bank, a community bank, the St. Cloud Rotary. I'm plugging all these people shamelessly on your program, but they are instrumental. They have been instrumental in helping us make this happen, and they continue to be. Again, the Builders Association, Tom Emmer, my goodness, Congressman Emmer, are you kidding me? We were having trouble getting the property because it was in foreclosure. I called him. He called me back. I said, "This is what I'm trying to do." The bank called us the next day, Coach Love, because yeah.
Wow.
And so this is all true stuff, man. It can be done, but I think we have to reach out. And when I say we, I mean law enforcement. We have to reach the community, and this wasn't done overnight. Um, the the rapport and the relationships were built over time, and we continue to work on strengthening those and building new ones so that when we do reach out, they reach back.
How long have you been police chief?
9 years in August.
Wow.
9 years, that's a long shelf life for a chief. But the folks there have been so good to me and to us. Did I tell you my story about the flower bed?
No.
Okay, so we all witnessed the carnage in Minneapolis, right? They burned down the
Right.
precinct. So a couple days after that, I pulled up to the police department in St. Cloud, and our two women, two of our citizens, planting flowers in the flower bed on the PD. And they continued to do that all summer. And all the flowers were donated, Coach Love, by local. So this is what I'm saying. This is the kind of community that we have. And we probably have the nicest flower beds in the city.
It sounds like you do.
I mean, when most people are trying to burn down police departments, our citizens are beautifying ours. I mean, come on. What a juxtaposition.
Well, the reality is you're actually your police department is planting flowers in the hearts. So that's why you're blooming.
Nice
Flowers in
metaphor there,
reality.
Coach Love. I see what you did right there. But you know what? And we're deliberate about that because it matters. It matters and it works. So I can't be more proud of not only my staff, my PD, but the community itself. Whenever we reach out, they reach back.
So this is amazing. You teased us a little bit about your TED Talk and that it was about kindness. Would you go ahead and just break it down a little bit for us so that, you know, people will have a understanding of what that kindness talk was about?
I will, but I would rather they go see it. So I'll give you the broad strokes, Coach Love.
That's good. I like it.
It is simply about the need for us to be kinder to one another. And I actually built an app. I built a kindness app. Okay, so that's the foundation and the premise of it. But I didn't do it with a computer. I did it with my mind, with my heart, and with my soul. And so they have to watch to get the app. But that's the impetus of it. That's the genesis of it. That is the thrust behind it. Is these are just my suggestions or what I think we need to do to be kinder to one another. And these are things that have worked for me. So it was a privilege and a pleasure to be able to do it. If I tell you any more, they're not going to need to watch it because remember, it was only 12, right?
Well, you know what? That is good enough. And I'm just simply going to say Chief Blair is giving you something to click on. How about that?
Please check it out. And in fact, I'm not sure if it's up on my website yet, Coach Love, but they can certainly find it on YouTube. But it was really cool to be able to do it. And, I've gotten some great feedback from it. But again, it's just anecdotal stuff mixed in with what I think we should be doing or how, and what has worked for me. And so if you got 12 minutes to spare in your life, check it out. And I don't think you'll be disappointed.
I don't think they'll be disappointed either. I watched it and I enjoyed it quite a lot. I really did. Do you have any parting words for our family?
Other than thank you, which is not enough for you giving me the opportunity to visit with you and your family. It's just, man, we're we're in some turbulent waters right now. Let's be right. Let's keep it 100, Coach Love. But we're gonna get through this because we've been in turbulent waters before. But the only way we get through this is by remembering that we're all human beings first. And we've got to get back to being able to respectfully disagree with one another without being disagreeable. How's that?
I think that is perfect, that we've got to remember that we're all human beings. We've got to learn human beings first, and we've got to learn how to learn to disagree without being disagreeable, and we've got to learn how to practice our civility.
Oh, 100%. That's where and the Omega, right?
There you go.
Got to be civil with one another. So thank you again, Love, for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And I just want to highlight for the audience what I enjoy about Chief Blair first is that he talks the talk, but he walks the walk. And he teaches other people how to walk the walk. Now, that's a good thing.
I'm trying, man, and I'm trying to never forget where I came from. Well, and I won't. I'm a product of the hood, but my zip code didn't determine my outcome. So other people thought it would or should, but it starts within for me. Self-definition is very important. I define who I am, not some statistician or some PhD who says that because I was born in this zip code and in this environment and in this ethnicity, I'm supposed to be this or that. I decide that. And so I would invite your family and your audience, if they are doing that, double down. If they're not, try it. It works. You decide who you are. Don't let other people do it for you.
I like it. I like it. I think we'll have them back. Thanks for watching.
I would love to come back and check out my website, right? WilliamBlairAnderson.com.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll catch you guys later.
Thank you.